This morning, the cost of the coronavirus. Budget cuts likely coming to Texas. Comptroller Glenn Hager looks at the state's checkbook with us from Austin. Congress poured billions more dollars into financial help for small businesses, but will it be enough this time? Listen to what Representative Granger told us from the U.S. Capitol. And reopening Texas. How soon will it be safe for us to go back to work? This morning, we'll talk to Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner about the plan for his city.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good morning. Lots to get to across the state and in D.C. this morning. First, let's get you caught up on the top political stories we are watching. Fewer of us are driving and filling up right now, so it should be no surprise about the collapsing price of oil. Over the next few months, it's not forecasted to get any better either. And not only is this going to affect countless jobs in the industry, but also the state budget, which counts on oil revenue. Something we'll talk to Comptroller Glenn Hager about in a moment. Sad news from outside San Antonio. A councilman from the city of Live Oak has died from COVID-19. Anthony Brooks was 42 on the right there, and a few days after his death, the councilman's husband, also seen in this image, also died from the virus. And the state's first hemp license, it was issued to a farmer in Killeen. This license lets that farmer grow hemp for a year. Hemp looks like marijuana but doesn't get you high. Instead, hemp can make everything from rope and clothes to paper and insulation. And the Texas Department of Agriculture says it is working through more than 500 applications from farmers right now. Those licenses will bring some money into the state, but no question, with the collapse of oil and sales tax revenue likely down, the state budget is going to come up short when Texas lawmakers return to the Capitol in January. The one person those lawmakers are looking at right now is one of their former colleagues, State Comptroller Glenn Hager. He keeps the checkbook for the state of Texas, and Hager joins us this morning from his home in Katy. Comptroller Hager, good to see you.
It's good to be with you again.
Cities are cutting their budgets. Counties are as well, too, expecting a steep drop in sales taxes. Right. What kind of numbers are we looking at right now? What kind of projections are you seeing?
You know, I got out a few months ago just to kind of start talking about the issue that undoubtedly we're going to be facing a recession in Texas, much like the nation as well as the rest of the world, as we're, at least here in Texas, not only faced with the pandemic of the coronavirus and the slowing down of the economy, but also on top of that is the lower oil prices. So that's twice the headwinds that are facing Texas. If you look back on prior events, whether it's the great financial crisis, 9/11, we don't have real good data today. We will have a much greater picture in the next 45 days as what the initial impacts of this are doing to the state economy. But I wanted to get out pretty early, and unfortunately, we have to use that word recession. And unfortunately, I have to say that, you know, we know that the revenue estimate, when I revise it here in a few months, will be downward several $1 billion. But we just don't have good hard data yet to be able to know exactly how much dollars we're talking about. But again, that's putting in perspective the state budget here in Texas with federal and state dollars is about $126 billion. So the point being is some small variation pretty quickly gets into billions of dollars.
And obviously for years the state's try to diversify its economy. But how will the collapsing price of oil affect the state budget?
Well, fortunately, we don't budget directly off of severance taxes, unlike some other states. Most of that money goes to either our state economic stabilization fund or our rainy day fund, which we have a very healthy balance. So that's going to help Texas cash flow through this time period, as well as when the legislature gets back into session next January to be able to bridge any gaps that we have in this current 2-year budget that ends August of next year, or as we look to the new 2-year state budget that they'll start working on when they get back into legislative session. But as you mentioned earlier, sales tax will be down. That will be the major impact to the state treasury, because roughly about 58% of all tax collections into the state treasury is sales tax. And we all know that our expenditures have gone down significantly as most people are staying at home, or a lot of people just can't afford it either because unfortunately people have been furloughed, they've been laid off, or businesses that are having a very hard time struggling through this very downturn that we're seeing in the economy right now.
Yeah, House Speaker Dennis Bonnen has suggested that every state agency make a 5% budget reduction. Is that going to be enough, though?
Well, that's one of the things. I've talked to leadership quite a bit over the last several weeks, and one of my recommendations is if you asked agencies to cut earlier rather than waiting longer. Taking a shallower cut for long is significant dollars, but I think it's going to take a lot of different tools in the toolbox. And once we get a little bit further into seeing a real picture of what this downturn means, how long is it, how deep is it going to be, then at least advise agencies that they may need to be able to have to cut more in the coming months, whether it's this summer or later this fall, if that is what leadership decides that they think we need to do.
So are you behind that as well, too, what the speaker said? It sounds like you said that you suggested this to leadership, including the speaker, of starting to kind of hack away the budget now, huh?
If you just look at what prior events, when we've had downturns in prior economies, this is just one of the many tools in the toolbox. The Economic Stabilization Fund is one tool. We have a wide variety of tools. And one of the things that I did, at least in my state agency, probably about 4 weeks ago, is we implemented a strategic hiring freeze where we're not going out and making new hires. We are freezing pay, as well as we're looking at all of our IT projects. Some of them we may go forward with. Some of them we're going to pull down because we don't need to go forward with them. Just like anybody would do in their personal household or their business, they're going to have to find all the different ways to manage through this. And so I've suggested to other agencies, you need to start looking at your budgets, because I don't know exactly what leadership's going to decide, but I do think at some point some type of reduction in expenditures to agencies is probably going to have to happen.
Controller Hager, the Texas Workforce Commission commissioner told us that it has paid out $1.7 billion in benefits. Of course, some of that's federal money, but the TWC has $900 million left in its bank account. What happens if the state depletes that money paying out unemployment benefits?
Yeah, all states are looking at this the very exact same issue. Other states are depleting theirs even quicker than Texas. But typically what happens is you either go to the federal government, and the federal government will give a loan. One of the things that we're looking at in my office is the COVID dollars that are coming to the state of Texas, $11.2 billion. 45% of that is to local governments. 55% of that is to the state, and that is for directly COVID-type expenses. And so what I'm trying to get a little bit better handle on and working with Texas Workforce Commission is, can some of those dollars be potentially used to replenish part of that fund, and so therefore they don't have to raise those rates on employers to replenish the fund in the long run, hopefully use some of those dollars to be able to use for paying unemployment right now.
Wow, and if they were to raise the taxes on employers, that would have to be done through the legislature, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So essentially the legislature, and then Workforce Commission obviously has some tools that they can, but I don't know exactly. It wouldn't be anything immediately. That would be in the long run as you're trying to replenish that trust fund. And so therefore, any of the dollars that we can use that we're getting from DC, that just seems, in my opinion, if possible, it's a very logical use of those dollars.
All right. State Comptroller Glenn Hager, good to see you again.
It's great to be with you.
In Harris County, complaints that one order to protect people from the coronavirus has gone too far. County Judge Lena Hidalgo ordered that people wear face masks when they're out in public. That's the same as in Dallas and a lot of other Texas counties. But in Houston, you could get a $1,000 fine for not wearing a mask. That's led to at least one lawsuit and complaints of government overreach. Ross Ramsey is a co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune in Austin Forest. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well. These mandatory masks amount to government overreach. That's what a lot of people are saying in Harris County, but Dallas has the same policy. We haven't heard any of those complaints in Dallas County.
I think the pushback was the fine. It was interesting. We talked a couple of weeks ago about Laredo putting in fines for people who weren't wearing masks, and there wasn't much of an uproar there. In Houston, even some law enforcement people said, this is a waste of time. People ought to wear masks in all of these places and ought to be responsible, but we need to get it out of the law enforcement realm and the fine realm.
In the middle of this pandemic, you guys are doing polls at the Texas Tribune. We always appreciate that. But you asked Texans about the coronavirus. What are they saying? What was your biggest takeaway from the poll that was released on Friday and Saturday?
To me, the lasting impression when you go through this whole poll of 40 questions or whatever it was that Texans are pretty willing to give up things in order to protect themselves from the coronavirus. They're worried about it. They're worried about catching it. Their list of concerns are first health and then economics. And when you ask people, when do you think that the coronavirus will be contained enough for normal activities like sporting events and all of that to continue? 9% say now, 21% say in a few weeks, 41% say in a few months. So they're kind of dug in.
Wow. All right, Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner on reopening the state's largest city, what he's watching for, and whether Houston will have to cut city jobs or services. And reopening Texas, whenever that happens, will require small businesses. Congress just approved billions more dollars in financial help for them. Congresswoman Granger is with us from D.C. on who that money is meant for. Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment. No one knows how long social distancing might last, so who wants to go stand in line to vote at a polling place? Voting by mail is the latest flashpoint among Texas Democrats and Republicans. Democrats say it's necessary to maintain participation. Republicans, though, worry about fraud. But 5 states do this successfully right now. In fact, Washington State has done it for 15 years. And a Republican Secretary of State there, she says it works great. She laid it all out for us in the latest episode of our Y'all-itics Political Podcast. Pause your screen here and point your cell phone's camera at this QR code on the screen. It's going to take you to the latest episode, and while you're there, subscribe to us as well. The Houston economy is the 15th largest in the world. GDP $490 billion a year, so it is no wonder that Houston is talking about how and when to reopen. Joining us this morning from his office at the City Hall is Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. Mayor, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. It's good to be with you.
We appreciate you joining us. Houston has not yet reached its peak with coronavirus cases. When do you think the city will realistically start relaxing restrictions and kind of restarting the local economy?
You know, interestingly enough, I was talking with Dr. Hortez, who's one of the leading doctors at the Baylor College of Medicine earlier this morning. And he was indicating that Houston, we may be at our peak right about now. Things are starting to flatten out. There are more people that are being discharged from our hospitals for COVID than are in the hospital beds right now. So all of those signs are good. The medical professionals and doctors from the Texas Medical Center are saying that we should be able to handle the load with existing hospital facilities. ICU beds are good in terms of space availability. Same thing for ventilators. So the numbers are looking good. But at the same time, what they're saying is that we have to continue to do what we have been doing that brought us to this point.
Yeah, that's terrific news on the health front. Of course, the economic front is completely a different picture. The price of oil has collapsed. I'm curious what kind of projections you've seen in regards to a loss of sales tax revenue for the city.
Well, Ben, you are absolutely correct. We know it's not just a healthcare crisis, but it's an economic crisis. Based on our projections, Houston stands to lose a little bit more than $100 million in sales tax. That's quite a bit. It's going to, we are right in the process of getting ready to submit the budget. I have to submit to the city council members. We are looking at deferring all 5 of my police cadet classes. That would be a first. Since I have been mayor. We're looking at furloughing thousands of employees in the city of Houston and deferring other things. So this will be by far the worst budgetary deficit in the city's history. I thought in 2016 when I came in, the budget deficit then with the pension costs rising was going to be the worst thing that I would face. But this budgetary cycle caused by COVID will be even worse.
More widespread testing for the coronavirus is obviously needed in Houston and in every city and across the state. When do you think that might be available in Houston?
Well, it needs to be available like yesterday.
Right.
Look, since I've been mayor, we've faced several major storms. Hurricanes, Hurricane Harvey in 2017, the Tax Day flood in 2016, Tropical Storm Imelda in 2019. You could look at the radar screen and you could discern where the storm was, when it would hit, and when it would clear out. The way the eyes on this particular virus is not radar, but it's the testing. The testing will tell you who has it, to what degree, how pervasive it is in our respective communities, and then it will help to channel the strategies that we need to deal with it. In the absence of widespread, robust, what I call ubiquitous testing, you really don't know where you are, and you kind of flying blindly. So in terms of the 2 public stand-up FEMA testing sites in the city of Houston, we are testing at our maximum capacity, 1,000 tests a day. And those stations are scheduled to be open till 7. We are reaching that maximum capacity at about 3 p.m. every day.
Wow.
So we double that capacity. Yeah. Instead of doing 1,000, we need to be between 3,000 to 5,000. That's on the public side. And in addition, we need the private sector to be testing as well.
I know you guys are looking forward to it. I know everyone across the state is as well, too. Certainly good to hear the good news as far as the health outlook there. So Mayor Sylvester Turner from Houston, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
5 million Texans rely on small businesses for a paycheck. Congress just poured more money back into federal programs to help those businesses stay afloat right now for things like the Paycheck Protection Program and forgivable SBA loans. Congresswoman Granger is the most senior Republican woman in the U.S. House. She represents Fort Worth and Weatherford and joins us from D.C. Congresswoman, thank you for the time. We appreciate it. Let's get right to this bill. Will this be enough money, in your opinion, for all the small businesses that have applications pending?
No, I don't think so, and that's unfortunate. The good part is it's so popular. The first round was so popular that a lot of people now understand how good it can be. We put in more money for more people, but we reached 1.6 million small business owners before, so there's going to be a lot of help. I'm hoping that we can keep going on this because small business is so very important. And it's so important that they keep their employees. So we're going to do this. We've done a big outreach so people will really understand that they can keep their employees. If they keep their employees, that loan they got will be forgiven, which is pretty amazing. Yeah,
you said keep going on this. Does that mean a third round potentially coming for of aid for small businesses?
You know, this situation, it's a crisis, and you know, of course it is. It's an economic crisis, and it's also a public health crisis, and we'll have to see as the public health works its way through. But the small businesses, which is really what we're aimed at, to keep them going, that's also a crisis. I think that based on the popularity it was in the last round, which is $340 billion, this is $310 billion. We'll still have small businesses that will need help.
Congresswoman, how likely might all this new money go? How likely will it be this is spent within a few weeks?
I think it will go a long way in that, and I checked this before I came and looked at this because we have people that applied the last time, didn't get chosen because the money ran out. So they're in line and should be taken first, really. And if we aim it at small business that have to have this loan to stay open and keep their employees, and I owned a small business myself for 20 years, and I spent a lot of time on this bill explaining that it's not you want just any employees, you want the employees that know your customers, and so that's very important. You know, I know it'll go a long way, $310 billion, but let's see, because we have so many small businesses that need the help.
Well, the fine print in the first CARES Act got a lot of small businesses upset because big businesses like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Potbelly Sandwiches, these chains with access to the capital markets, they got a cut of that Paycheck Protection Program. Is that fair?
It was not intended that way. Now remember, we were making decisions very fast. The Congress was making decisions very fast of how can we bring the help. And we wanted it small mom and pop businesses. I worked with one business in Dallas, Texas, that a man and a woman who've owned their business for nearly 50 years and got hit by that terrible storm in Dallas, and then this. And it was meant for the people like that. The money ran out before they got, even though that they went through the process. So they'll be in line to be helped, but it was not intended for big companies. Some of those situations exist because it's a large overall company, but they have different small businesses within it. And it's all right for that, but we should be very, very careful. The banks should be held accountable for using this money as the Congress intended, and that's truly small businesses.
All right, Congresswoman Granger, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
How and when the economy should reopen differs between cities, counties, and the state. Do doctors or does politics drive all of these decisions? That's one of our topics next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross is back. Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram is here, and Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas, joins us for this segment each week. We'll also start with you. Cities, counties, and the state all trying to decide when and how to reopen. How much is politics driving this, or is it doctors who are kind of on the background here pulling the strings?
You know, the governor said that doctors are driving his decisions on this. Politics are a part of it, and the people who are demanding to have the doors thrown open look like a very loud minority, even within the Republican Party. I think people want to come out when it's safe. I'm curious to see when, if they open the doors, people are willing to come out and go through those open doors.
And, you know, Ross is right, Bud. They are a very loud minority out there. Are lawmakers listening?
Well, they're a loud and clattering minority, and there's a little bit of money behind them. I mean, there's some very well-supported special interest groups that are pushing to open up. Jason, it's kind of an old story in Texas. The rich people want to put the help back to work.
Bernadine, the coronavirus is no doubt going to cost Texas's largest cities, even the state as well, and lost sales tax revenue. Is there any way, do you see, for state lawmakers to avoid making budget cuts?
No. I don't see any way, because too much of the economy is shut down. They're going to have to. And we'll see how soon they open and how much they open in terms of businesses. But there will be budget cuts.
Bud, what's the first to go?
Well, you know, you see the cuts, and you start looking at a lot of education, a lot of higher ed in particular. They keep looking at combining universities, saving money, scaling back on the multiple layers of university systems. You could scale back some on the system structure without getting rid of campuses.
Yeah.
You really can't cut K-12 right now. You have a commitment to pre-K. I think you're going to have to see some consolidation, some reduction in services.
Any that surprise you, Ross? Final words?
No, you know, in 2008, after that crash, the federal government put in a lot of money. That's a possibility if the state has to cut its public ed and higher and health and human services.
Yeah, good deal, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching as well. We'll be back next Sunday with another episode of Inside Texas Politics. We'll see you then, and hope you have a good week.